Let's talk about punishment now. The purpose of punishment, unlike reinforcement, is to decrease future behavior. Your child does something that you don't like the child doing, then you want to punish the child to get the child to stop doing that. That's essentially what you do. So you yell, you spank, you insult to try to decrease the behavior you just saw. You know, child is fresh with you, and you smack the child, or the child is fresh with you, and you yell at that child and say, "How dare you say that to me?" Okay? And these are examples of positive punishment. You are adding something unpleasant. You know, yelling at them, hitting them, insulting them. These are punishment by application. You are adding something unpleasant. Negative punishment is when you take away something that they like, something that is rewarding. So, silent treatment, taking away your pleasant conversation, taking away their car keys, taking away their iPhone, putting them in timeout. These are ways in which you are taking the child away, taking the good things away from the child, and by doing this, the purpose again is to decrease that behavior from happening again. The rewarding stimulus is removed, punishment by removal. Let's say you take an aspirin for a headache, and unfortunately that aspirin gives you an allergic reaction. Oh my goodness. So that aspirin causes some unpleasant circumstance, so you are not going to take that aspirin again. A negative punishment might be, when you have a headache, maybe your spouse is particularly nice to you. When you don't have a headache, they ignore you. Well, maybe you don't mind having the headache if your spouse is going to give you more attention. Take the aspirin, it takes away the attention you get from your spouse. So maybe you'll live with your headache and just get your spouse's sympathy. But when you take the aspirin, and the headache goes away, that's negative reinforcement. So when you take aspirin for a headache, and the headache goes away, well, that's where reinforcement plays in, and this is negative reinforcement, and you're therefore going to be more likely to take the aspirin for the headache, assuming these other punishments are not that severe. If it's only a minor allergic reaction, maybe a little bit of a runny nose, maybe the sympathetic attention of your spouse is nice, but it's not really that important to you. But let's say that headache is severe, it's a migraine, and you really need to get this headache taken care of. Well, you'll live with the punishment as long as you get that reinforcement of the headache going away. So let's talk a little bit more about punishment. The goal of punishment is to decrease behavior. Now realize this: punishment can be done ineffectively, such that the goal is not achieved. Where the goal is to try to decrease the occurrence of the behavior, it doesn't work. Punishment, in order to be effective, should occur as soon as possible after the behavior. If it happens too long after the behavior, then the child is going to be less likely, or the adult for that matter, is going to be less likely to make the connection between the behavior and the consequence. Again, think about just like speeding. You're going to keep on speeding, keeping on speeding, if your punishment only comes way, way later. You'll keep on doing it. The punishment should be sufficient. It should be strong enough to deter you from doing the behavior. Oftentimes the behaviors we get punished for are things that we like doing, such as speeding. Speeding is fun. You like the sensation of going fast. Speeding is good because it gets us to our destination sooner than if we went the speed limit. So both of those are things that make speeding pleasurable. Well, your punishment needs to be severe enough to offset the pleasure you get from speeding. Okay? So the punishment would have to be very severe. So maybe a very high fine. Okay? Instead of a $150 ticket, have it a $1,000 ticket. Well, $1,000 is a lot worse. What about if you are caught speeding, they put you in jail right away? Well, that is also a very strong punishment, which might serve as a greater deterrent. So the punishment should be strong enough in order for it to be effective. Problem is, sometimes your punishment could be too strong. And if we're talking about a parent and a child and we're talking about physical punishment, then we're talking about the possibility that it could become abuse, and that's a real problem. The effective punishment, the punishment should be consistent. It should not be just, here and there random. It should be consistent. And again, consistency in terms of severity too. It should be conditional. If you do this, you'll get punished. If not, you won't. Sometimes parents might punish just because I want to show my child that I'm a tough parent. And they might just punish randomly. Well, the child isn't going to learn anything from that. They're only going to learn to be afraid of, when the punishment is going to come, because it's not going to be associated with anything that the child is doing. It just comes arbitrarily. Finally, the punishment should be combined with solid reasoning, and it also should be combined with reinforcement. The child needs to know why they are being punished, why he or she is being punished. This is very important. In other words, the parent needs to express to the child, maybe the child is punished for running into the street without looking, and the parent yells at the child, and the parent says, "The reason I'm yelling at you is because you're running into the street. You can get killed. I'm trying to keep you safe." So, in other words, there's an explanation as to why you're getting the punishment. Finally, and reinforcement is absolutely essential. There are some parents who do too much of the punishment and not enough of the reinforcement, and they're going to have problems. You need to reinforce good behavior. Okay? When the child is good, it does not mean the absence of bad behavior. The child needs to be rewarded for the good behavior, as well as punishment for the bad behavior. Because if you're not reinforcing good behavior, then the only time the child is getting attention from you is when the child is doing something bad. Well, what happens in that case? In that case, the child is now learning the only way I get attention from mom and dad is when I do something bad. Because getting punishment, getting yelled at, is better than no attention at all. So you're unintentionally reinforcing now bad behavior. And that's when you have a little monster on your hands. Because now the child knows what it needs to do to get your attention, and it's going to do these bad things. You want your child to get your attention by doing good things, and you reinforce those good things, they will keep on doing those good things. If you only unintentionally reinforce the bad behavior, then God help you. The research is pretty consistent on this, that reinforcement is a much stronger tool for learning than punishment. They're both, they both have their strength, but in terms of really wanting to guide your child into doing the appropriate behaviors, reinforcement is what it does. Punishment does not teach you good behavior. Punishment only teaches you don't do this bad behavior. But you need to be able to teach the child how to do good behaviors. And that's essentially what you want to do. That should be the priority. When it comes to physical punishment, despite what you might hear about like the phrase like spare the rod, spoil the child, and stuff like that, there is no need for a parent to use physical punishment to be effective as a parent, to be effective in terms of instilling discipline. Punishment often does more harm than good. And when we're talking about severe punishment, when it becomes abusive, that's where you can have it becomes even worse. Here are some of the problems with the severe punishment, the physical punishment. It results in unwanted fears. Essentially, if the child is afraid of the parent because of what the parent is going to do, essentially what that can do, that fear actually interferes with the learning. The child needs to learn these are good behaviors, these are bad behaviors, and here's why, and do the behaviors that are going to get reinforced. That's what you want the child to learn. But fearing the parent is not the ultimate goal of what you want the child to do. Reinforcement tells the child exactly what to do, because with reinforcement the child does the behavior, positive consequence, gets rewarded. This is something that you want. This essentially gives a very clear message to the child of what to do. If the parent is punishing the child for doing something, well, it hasn't given the child something else to do to take that place. The child might be jumping on the bed to get exercise. Well, if you yell at the child for jumping on the bed, you haven't solved the problem of how to get the exercise that the child wants and needs. So you say, well, you can't jump on the bed, but here is a safe playroom where you can jump up and down. You just can't do it on the bed because it's going to break the bed. So the punishment doesn't tell the child what to do. It just says it only suppresses the undesirable behavior. Furthermore, the child might learn to do the behavior without you being there. So when you yell at the child for jumping on the bed, that means that when you go out of the house and you're not there, the child may jump up and down on the bed again because you won't catch them. Just like the police officer who is not at the speed trap is not going to catch you if you're speeding because they're not there. So you learn to speed in some places, but not where the speed traps are. Problem with punishment, physical punishment, is teaching the child that giving pain to other people is justifiable. Well, you don't want to have that child carrying that philosophy to the schoolyard. You don't want, because the child is going to be punished by other children too. The child is going to be insulted by another child. The child is going to be, maybe another child is going to take the ball away from the child. Well, do you want your child to be hitting that other child, taking a stick and hitting that child? Maybe getting a stick and getting hit is what your parents did to you, but you don't want your child doing that to another child. But that's exactly what you're teaching the child when you are hitting your child with a stick or a switch. As I was saying before, the unwanted behaviors, they may be suppressed, but they haven't disappeared. The jumping on the bed is going to occur when you're not there to enforce your punishment. With reinforcement, the child is, especially when the child can learn to find their own ways of getting reinforced without you needing to give them the treat, maybe to give themselves the treat, they can engage in those reinforcing behaviors without you monitoring them. Another negative consequence could be that when you are, using physical punishment toward your child, well, maybe your child is getting bigger and your child might do the same to you and maybe hit you back, and that's not going to be pleasant either. As I said before, the punishment can be abusive. And you can even see how that would happen, actually, when you think about it. What I said before is that effective punishment needs to be strong enough, right? but it also needs to be stronger than the reinforcement that the child got from engaging in the behavior. So if the child steals the game toy from the other child, yanks it from the other child's hand, and the other child cries, well, you want to punish that child for stealing the game toy. But if you make it very, very severe, and the child will learn to live with the severity because they really want the game toy, now you have to get even more severe, and more severe, until finally it can become abusive. You know, that if the child can learn to endure severe punishment because they really want the reinforcement, well, once it gets past a certain point, then it becomes abusive.